So my name's Gale. I live in Wiltshire with my husband, and we've got two boys who are 8 and 6. There we go, family selfie. And the reason I've been asked, I think, to give this speech today is a few years ago we embarked on something called My Make, Do and Mend year, which was a year we spent buying nothing new. And it was an absolutely fabulous experience, and as cliched as it sounds, it did totally change our lives. It's something I would recommend to anyone. It changed not just kind of how and where we shopped, but it changed how I see my place in the world too, and I'll kind of come back to that later at the end. Now, when I've sort of given a couple of little talks about this year we spent buying nothing new, and I tend to get sort of one of two reactions. One is, oh my God, how on earth did you cope? And the other one is, well, yeah, so what? We kind of do that all the time anyway. And I totally get that for lots of people, especially as Helen referred to in these kind of times of austerity, that making do and buying secondhand is kind of a way of life, and some people are brought up like that, and you know, their sort of normal way of shopping is to visit the charity shops and things, and a lot of people do it because they have no choice because of financial reasons. But for us at the time, it was actually quite a big thing. My parents were kind of baby boomers, and far enough away from the sort of austerity of the post-war years and embedded in that kind of consumer backlash that came off the back of the enforced austerity of the sort of make, do and mend era of World War II. And without wanting to age myself too much, I grew up in the 80s, and both my parents worked and had good jobs, and I don't think anybody really gave a second thought to sustainability. It meant something completely different, and there was no concept that really, I don't think that we lived on this world of finite resources. And in fact, I think, you know, if you did your recycling, everyone thought you were a bit of a hippie. So, you know, and then fast forward a good few years, and when I was sort of setting up my own home, I would gleefully spend days in IKEA in the marketplace with all those things I didn't know I wanted till I went in. And it didn't really occur to me to look anywhere else for the things that I wanted. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, I wasn't a natural thrifter before my Make, Do and Mend year, and so if we can do it, then anybody can. And I think it is just you know, making a start and this series of sort of baby steps. Not that Buy Nothing New year is a baby step, but it kind of was. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our year, but actually a kind of blow-by-blow account probably isn't all that interesting for anybody other than me. So I'll try and keep that bit a little bit short and then focus on kind of what we learnt as we go along. And I'm not sure whereabouts you guys are on the kind of make, do and mend spectrum. I would imagine that I'm probably preaching a little bit to the converted looking around the room today, but I still hope our journey will kind of be of interest. So before we get started, the first question, apart from those two reactions I mentioned earlier, the first question I usually get asked is a slightly bemused why? Why would you do that? And I confess that I'm still not entirely sure. I was definitely the driving force behind it. But I still can't remember exactly why. I remember William, who's our eldest, he was about 3 at the time, and he, just in that kind of way of toddlers, you know, you'd be out in the shops and he would see something and very vocally and very loudly demand that he wanted it. And it just kind of struck me that he was already tuned into this sort of consumer demand, this need for stuff, and he sort of recognised this thing that, you know, more is better. And I kind of know that it seems to be a fairly normal toddler, preschooler thing, but it kind of struck me as, you know, is that something that we've taught him? Is that something that he's picked up from society or from us? And at about the same time, I read an article in a magazine about a lady doing what she called her second-hand safari, which was her own year buying nothing new, and I started to wonder if we could do it too. I rather naively thought it sounded like a bit of a fun challenge. So it's important to note at this point, I have an awful lot of amazing ideas, and So when I floated this particular amazing idea to my husband, Ben, he kind of did what he normally does, was go, oh, right. And then he kind of normally is safe in the knowledge that I'll get distracted by the next shiny new amazing idea and then forget about it. So he kind of, you know, turned his attention back to the TV. But for some reason, I didn't get distracted from this one, and I kept on about it. And I think at some point he realised I was quite serious. So we sat down and we had a proper chat. And he was generally quite supportive. His biggest stumbling block was when I said, you know, you won't be able to buy a newspaper. He was like, excuse me? I said, no, you won't be able to buy a newspaper, it's new. And at the time, he probably only bought a newspaper, I don't know, every 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm not quite sure why it was such a biggie. But he was like, well, no, I can buy a newspaper because it's made from recycled paper. It's going to be recycled. I was like, no, it's got the word new. It's a newspaper. It's new. You can't buy it. So, and I'm quite all or nothing. So I was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to, we're not making concessions for newspapers. So I'll leave you to deduce who won that particular skirmish. It's me. We decided that we were going to go ahead. We sat down, we thrashed out some rules so that we had a bit of some boundaries. We like boundaries with 2 small boys. So we said we could buy toiletries, we could buy medicines, we could buy underwear. I drew the line at second-hand pants. I said, and the boys' feet were very little and I wanted to make sure they weren't damaged, so I said we could buy shoes for the boys. And then we also decided, I think after something broke, that if something did break, we could buy something new, buy a new part to fix it, rather than ditch something that was sort of otherwise fixable. And I'm quite impatient, so waiting for the new year, which probably would have been a logical time to start, was far too long away. So we started on the 1st of September. We set a start date of the 1st of September. And the 1st of September arrived quite quickly, and I discovered it's quite hard to start not doing something with any kind of fanfare or gusto. I kind of sat there and didn't go shopping. So it wasn't quite as exciting as I thought it might be, but I was hugely relieved that all the white goods didn't. I had this vision that all the white goods were going to spontaneously combust or stop working, but yeah, that didn't happen. So I kind of set about gaily exploring all different kinds of new retail outlets, visited the car boot and the charity shops and the flea markets and the auction houses and the vintage shops and all those kinds of things, and probably got a little bit secondhand happy for a little while. Having only ever really owned 2 dresses, probably for weddings and parties, I suddenly had kind of 4 everyday dresses because they were like £5 each. So my wardrobe expanded quite quickly, and I did find myself buying lots of things I wouldn't ordinarily have bought because they were kind of cheap and they were guilt-free. And I don't know about you, but I hate clothes shopping. I still hate clothes shopping, and so this kind of felt like it gave me free rein to go clothes shopping. And actually, clothes shopping with small children in charity shops is the best thing because you park them by the toy section, and then you run off to the clothes section and you have a little look, and it's much less stressful. So that's my top tip for you there. So yeah, I kind of very quickly had bulging cupboards and wardrobes, and it took me possibly longer than it should have done to realise that just because something's secondhand doesn't mean that I definitely have to buy it. So the first real challenge came when we embarked on what felt like at the time quite an epic road trip up to Scotland to visit my in-laws with the boys. And I find just packing really stressful, and especially when you're packing for 2 small boys and you're going to Scotland and you don't know what the weather's going to do. So you kind of pack for everything, and you've got the wellies and you've got the sun hats and you've got the sun cream and you've got the umbrellas and I always worry that I'm going to forget something, and I normally think it's okay, it doesn't matter if we forget something. I think one memorable time I forgot shorts in the summer. We can go to M&S or we can go to the supermarket and we can buy whatever we need, and I suddenly went, oh, I won't be able to do that. What am I going to... And I'll be in a strange town and I won't know where the charity shops are, and oh my goodness. And actually, inevitably it was fine, but it really made me aware of how vulnerable I think I felt without that sort of safety net of that instant consumerism, and it was quite a kind of an eye-opener really. But yeah, we survived, it was fine. Presents were a recurring theme throughout the year. The burning question became, is it okay to buy presents for people from a charity shop? And I'm still struggling with that one. Because I always have this, I don't know about you, but when you're buying presents, you have an amount in your head of that you should spend on people. And at Christmas, I found these 4 books in the charity shop for my dad, and they were perfect for him, and they looked brand new, and they came to the grand total of £2. And I felt really guilty, and I don't think he was like in any way the wiser at all. I don't think he even knew. When you rub out the little 50p thing on the front. But it still made me feel guilty, and I still felt the need to kind of give something else as well. So I think this need to give and to, I don't know, the pressure is quite strong. And William was at preschool, so there seemed to be an inordinate number of 4th birthday parties that I had to sort of prepare something for. And I found girls were much easier than boys because you can make kind of pretty pink things. But boys, 4-year-old boys are quite hard to make for. One of them I did, is there a picture up there? No. I found some marbles in the charity shop and made like a little bag and then printed out some things about making a marble run and some different games to play with them. But it's quite difficult. Like if you don't really know the parents that well, yeah, you know, do they think I'm a bit weird? Do they think I'm mean? And you don't know them well enough to kind of say, did you like it? And especially like when you spent time making something as well, and then you still think, oh, maybe it is just a bit rubbish. So I still find birthday parties really tricky now, and I think there's something about you walk in and there's the present table, and it's kind of full of like, especially if you have a whole class party, there's like 30 presents on there, and you just think, where are they going to put it all? Like, you know, this child already has inevitably a house crammed full of stuff, and where are they going to put it all? And so my kind of get out clause now is I make a little batch of mini shortbread biscuits. There's some up there. I don't know if you guys can see it properly. And I'll do them in like a 6 or an 8 or something like that and put them in a little paper bag. Or if I'm really short of time, I melt a bar of chocolate and then make massive chocolate buttons and put sprinkles on them, which my kids are always really excited by, but I don't know about other people's children. And I've still never been brave enough, like even with parents I know quite well, I'm still not brave enough to kind of bounce up to them in the playground next day and ask what they thought. So again, I think just another example of how strong this sort of pressure to give and to conform and to appear normal, I guess. So it wasn't just giving presents that caused us problems, or caused me problems, it was receiving them as well, because I kind of thought it'd probably be a bit cheaty to just make a big long list of everything I wanted or needed for the year and just present it to my mum at Christmas. So consequently, I asked for nothing, and I think my mum was like cursing me. I think it made it really difficult for people. So people do feel this compulsion to give, and we'd fallen into this ridiculous situation with my husband's siblings whereby they'd say, what do you want? We go, oh, I don't really know. Amazon vouchers? Yeah, all right, what do you want? I don't know, Amazon vouchers. So it was essentially just a money swap, except they had more disposable income than us, so we'd feel a bit crap because we were giving them less money than they were giving us. So I made the suggestion that Christmas that we just buy for the kids, and that did actually seem to go down quite well. And for my birthday, I think I've got a picture of it, Ben, my husband, pulled a blinder because he clubbed together with the rest of the family and they paid for me to go on a bread making course at River Cottage HQ, which was like phenomenal, and I absolutely loved it. And I still, you know, I bake every week now, bake bread, and it's something I'll never forget, and nothing ended up in landfill. And so I'm like a big fan now of giving experiences rather than things. So like for Christmas for the boys, we bought them tickets to go and watch Horrible Histories live and things like that. So just to try and limit the amount of plastic coming into the house. So yeah, Christmas, oh, I've got to save the pictures because they're a spoiler. Christmas was a highlight in that I think we did some pretty cool things. We made some pretty cool things, but a low light in that we didn't start until December, because I have this thing like Christmas doesn't start until December. So, and kind of neglected to think, oh, there might be quite a lot more work involved this year. So my top tip, if you're planning a make-done, then Christmas is probably kind of start now. And it was made more difficult by the fact that I decided we couldn't buy a tree, because we normally buy a proper tree, but I wasn't sure whether that counted as buying new, even though it was something that had grown. And I thought, no, we're going to make one. I'm going to have a look. We're going to make a tree. It's going to be awesome. And I spent hours on Pinterest, falling down the rabbit hole of Pinterest, looking for upcycled Christmas trees and something that we might be able to make. And I saw one made of egg boxes. And this is what I saw. And I thought, that looks pretty cool. We can do that. We've got egg boxes. This is what we made. So, yeah, you know, similar but different. I have to confess, once we put it together, I properly cried. And my husband was like, no, it's fine, don't worry about it, it looks great. Because I think he was thinking, shit, it's the 16th of December, what are we going to do if she doesn't like it? So yeah, that was our tree. And it made it onto Radio 2. I rang in with a picture of our tree, and it certainly made for a conversation piece for Christmas. And it has sort of, we now have a tradition of upcycled Christmas trees, but they are better than that, I would hasten to add. So in the new year, I stumbled across our local wildlife trust were doing something called, I think they called it Waste Watchers, but WAST, which was a cunning little thing, and a Slim Your Bin campaign to reduce the amount that households were sending to landfill. And I signed up just because I wanted to reduce the amount we were putting in our black bin, and I'd never really stopped and thought about that connection between what you're buying and what you're throwing away. And I suddenly realised that actually, ultimately, everything you buy, sadly, probably at some point ends up in the bin. And there's some crazy statistic about everything you buy ends up in the bin within 6 weeks, or some horrific statistic. So yeah, making that connection and realising that actually if I want to reduce the amount that we're putting in our bin, we really need to start at the other end. We need to think about what we're bringing into the house, and that's not just in terms of, you know, clothes and toys and things like that. It's the food and the packaging around it and all those kinds of things. And we went cold turkey on baby wipes. And for those of you without small children, you won't think that that's particularly a big deal, but believe me, it felt like a massive deal at the time, because we were already using reusable nappies and using reusable wipes on mucky bums, but I still had that sort of security packet of baby wipes in my bag for the hands and the faces and the car seats and everything else. So it felt like a really big deal. But and I said to my mum, like, what did you do before baby wipes? And she just sort of looked at me really blankly. So I don't know. I suspect it was the hanky and the spit. And I kind of drew the line at that. But so we had the flannel in a plastic bag thing, and I think the children possibly were slightly grubbier than other children, but we all survived, and I console myself with the fact that their immune systems are probably far stronger than other people's children's immune systems. So yeah, the year did have its highlights and its lowlights. Christmas was both a highlight and a low light. I have to confess that sitting painting egg boxes green at 10 o'clock at night in December was probably not our finest hour, and the egg box tree might not have looked quite the Pinterest vision of glory that I hoped for. But I learned loads of new skills, and I met loads of new people, some of whom are here today, online and offline, and had loads of great experiences that I would never otherwise have had. I kind of had this. When we started, I said, you know, I'm just going to say yes to the opportunities that come along for the year. And I ended up going on local radio and on the local TV, and I gave a TEDx talk, and was even asked to write some articles on mending for The Guardian. And, you know, all these things were hugely out of my comfort zone, but made for a brilliantly exciting year. And, you know, the low lights, like Christmas, and, you know, at times sat there at 10 o'clock again in the sewing machine the night before a party thinking, why didn't I just put something in the trolley when I was doing the food shop? Would have been much easier. But actually, you know, it was all good, clean fun, and I kind of learned a lot. So I learned really practical skills like darning. I learned to darn, darned my husband's socks, bless him, and patching. Small boys and mothers of small boys spend an awful lot of time on their knees. So we had an awful lot of pairs of jeans with holes in them, and I have to confess, up until my mate dementia, I'd never even sewn a button on. Like, I could sew, but I'd never sewn a button on. If anything like that broke, it got put in a little pile for my mother-in-law. Next time she came round, she kind of had this bag of stuff. And I don't know, I think I was worried that I would somehow do it wrong and it would come off again. Big deal. So yeah, I learned to sew on buttons. I learned to, and I'd never patched jeans. And I remember I thought, right, I'm going to patch a pair of Williams jeans. It's brilliant. And I did it. And then I went, oh, he's going to go to, when was the last time I saw a child with a patch on their jeans? And my child's going to be ostracised at preschool, and, you know, he's going to get picked on and he's going to be bullied because he's got a patch. And the people are going to, what are the teachers going to think of us? And actually it was fine. And so I think pretty much every single pair of jeans they had ended up with, and probably a pair of jeans I had ended up with patches on. And my first attempt, I think, had to be redone 3 times, but we got there in the end. And I kind of learnt that you just need to have a go. You just need to have a go, especially with mending stuff. You know, can't make it any worse. And embrace that kind of, something I call wonk, and it means that, you know, it's when you make something or you mend something and it ends up not quite perfect, a bit like my Christmas tree, ends up not quite perfect, ends up not quite how you envisaged it in your head. And that's kind of, I think we need to embrace that and see that as the kind of badge of honour, because it shows that it's not shopboard, that it's been mended, that it's been made. And I'm a big fan of visible mending, which is something that the guys at Stitched Up will tell you more about. So it's things like mends like this on your jeans and things that are kind of out there and proud, and they're a brilliant conversation starter, because people will say, oh, I love your jeans, and you go, oh yes, I mended them. And, you know, and it's just a really great way of kind of, and then people will say, oh gosh, yes, people don't mend things anymore, and things aren't made to be mended, and it's a really great way of starting a conversation. So yeah, I see it as a real kind of badge of honour. And I found new retail outlets like I said, the sort of charity shops and things like that, and I started making lots more use of sites like FreeCycle and Freegal and things like that, because I'm kind of making an assumption here that everybody knows about FreeCycle and things, but you know, you can, if you're looking for something specific, then you can ask for it, and you'll be surprised at the positive responses you often get, and also, you know, a great way of saving your kind of unwanted stuff from landfill. But I also discovered, as I sort of alluded to, this amazing community of people, and you know, I think when you're doing something like we did and you're surrounded by normal people, you know, on the school run and things like that, it's quite easy to feel quite isolated and quite alone, and like you're the only one who cares about these things, and you don't want to be kind of that one who's always banging on about repairing stuff, or, you know, looking frowningly at people with their disposable coffee cups and things like that. So to find this community online of all these people who were passionate about the same things that I was, and you know, I was kind of forced to confront a lot of these issues that I kind of knew about, like fast fashion and you know, the amount of waste and food waste and things like that, that I think we all kind of know about. We all know that it's not right that you can get 2 t-shirts for £5 in Primark, but for some reason we choose to look away, whether it's too hard to think about the alternatives or we think that it's someone else's problem to deal with. But I found that during the course of the year I was kind of forced to confront those kind of head on, and to think about what I could do about them, and to find that there was this community, especially online, that were all passionate and all trying to create change as well, was just phenomenal and really empowering. And there weren't just individuals who were making things happen, there were organisations too. And I stumbled across repair cafes, and which, if you don't know, they're places where you can go where there's a team of volunteer repairers who'll fix your stuff for you for free, or they'll help you to fix your stuff and sort of teach you if that's what you want, if you want to learn. And when I first found out about them, there were probably, I don't know, literally 3 or 4 around the country. And now there's over 200 on the Repair Cafe website, and those are just the ones that are affiliated to Repair Cafe. So there's, you know, there's hundreds and hundreds all over the country, and the guys at Stitched Up here in Manchester run a brilliant one, and I think it's once a month, and Alfred helps with that one. And they're here today. So if you do want to find out any more about repair cafes in general, or the Manchester Repair Cafe, then go and grab the guys at Stitched Up during the workshops or during lunch. I also discovered swishing, so like the clothes swap that's on here today, and again, another brilliantly simple way to refresh your wardrobe for kind of little or no money, and it keeps clothes out of landfill. And again, what I found, because I put some on in my town, and the people that came were people, and I think it's the same with repair cafes, they're people that wouldn't ordinarily come to sustainability events, they wouldn't come to green things, but they come to those things because they're useful and they're saving them money, and it's like the visible mending. It's a fantastic way to start a conversation. You know, you'd have conversations at repair cafes with people saying, you know, you'd start talking about planned obsolescence, and you know, how stuff isn't made to be fixed, and actually, yes, we can fix it, and all those kinds of things. And it's just a really brilliant way of reaching people that are outside of your bubble of, you know, sustainability or make, do and mend. And there's other brilliant projects, like there's the Edinburgh Tool Library, which is the first one in the country up in Edinburgh. And it works in exactly the same way as a regular library. So they've got tools instead of books, and you can go and you can borrow the tools. And Chris tells this brilliant story of how he's the founder, and when he was visiting the Toronto Tool Library in Canada, a guy came in, a homeless guy, I think, and he'd got a job, a week's work on a building site, but he needed to supply his own tools, and there's no way he could afford to buy them. And he came into the tool library, said, I was sent here, somebody said you might be able to help me. So they gave this guy the tools for the week and said, you know, off you go. And like, that changed somebody's life. That's just phenomenal, how such a simple thing can change somebody's life. And the work that they're doing up there, you know, it's not only changing individuals' life, it's bringing the communities together, and it's reskilling people, and it's teaching people these new skills, and again, it's starting these conversations. And I think the guys from the Real Junk Food Project are here today, and they're another brilliant example of just such a simple solution to such a hugely complex situation. And this time it's food waste, and over 1/3 of all the food produced in the world goes to waste, which is like just such a bonkers statistic when you think that, you know, we're on a planet of 7 billion people and we're struggling to feed so many of them. So, you know, they have this, like I said, this almost ridiculously simple idea of diverting the food waste from restaurants and from supermarkets, and then making it available to the people who need it. And I think all of these projects, and there's hundreds of them, they all show us that, you know, just with a little bit of creativity, there's these brilliantly simple solutions that actually tackle some hugely, hugely complex issues you know, things like resource depletion and things like the social inequality that Helen was talking about, and you know, that it can be done, and and all of these projects are kind of grassroots. They're kind of from the bottom up and helping people in a very real, very impactful way. I think as a society we've become so far removed from the production and the sort of manufacture of our goods and our food, and have wholeheartedly embraced this sort of throwaway, disposable culture. And we've forgotten the kind of true cost of our things. We've forgotten that somebody somewhere in a factory has had to sit and make our clothes. And there's, I don't know, this assumption that it's all automated, that it's just done on machines. And we forget that, you know, there's a farmer in a field who's had to plant that and grow that and harvest it and get it to the market. And we've just, it's just there and it's just cheap, and we don't respect it, I guess, and we don't respect the people that have made it anymore. And we've also lost all those skills that, you know, not so long ago were commonplace. Everybody would darn, everybody would fix, everybody would patch their things, everybody, you know, just a couple of generations ago. And we've lost those skills scarily quickly. And they're those skills that, you know, that meant nothing went to waste, that meant we were sort of valued our resources. And I think, as Helen said, in these times of austerity and this sort of political climate of uncertainty, it really feels important, and that these skills are needed more now than they ever were before. And I think we all need to find better ways to use resources more carefully, more thriftily, more respectfully, and to kind of find ways to re-skill people and to re-engage the general public with these kind of huge issues. And I think the empowering thing is that these are all issues that we can all take action on. You know, it doesn't need to be, you don't need to be part of an organisation, you don't need to be a government, you don't need to be a big business. These are all little baby steps that we can all take every day, and I think that's huge. And I do think it feels like things are starting to shift. There's you know, the general resurgence in crafting means that more and more people now are sewing and knitting, and it's becoming more of a normal thing to do, I guess, and something that you know, the sort of younger generation are re-embracing again. And I think, you know, and then off the back of that, people are then thinking, you know, once you learn to make your own clothes, you realise how much work goes into making clothes, and then and if you've made your own clothes and you've gone to that effort, then you are, I think, more likely to look after it and to repair it and to mend it when it's done. So I think there is a natural you know, kind of spread out from once you start to learn to make something, then you'll start to value something more and to repair it and fix it and that kind of thing. And I think people are starting to realise that we're living on this planet of finite resources, and you know, infinite growth on a planet of finite resources just isn't possible, and that we actually all need to start taking responsibility for slowing down our rate of consumption. And I do really strongly believe that this is something, like I said, that we can all do. And the biggest thing that I learned from our year buying nothing new is that it's very easy to feel disempowered and to feel overwhelmed. You know, I had times during the year where, like I said, I was forced to confront all these issues, and it felt really overwhelming when you actually stop and think about climate change and think about the future that my kids and their kids and things might have, and thinking, this is just ridiculous. What am I doing? I can't make, you know, I'm not going to make any difference in this. And by the end of the year, I'd kind of come full circle and realised, actually, I can. You know, there are things that I can do. I can repair my things, which means that they stay in use for longer, which means that their carbon footprint is less. I can, you know, be more careful about my use of the car. I can think about the things that I'm buying. I can buy less. These are all things that I can do and that everybody can do. And that's actually like hugely empowering. You know, we all make hundreds of choices every day, and we've all got the power to make better choices and to make more thoughtful choices. And to take responsibility for the impact of those choices, you know, to kind of, when you're buying something, to think, well, where has this come from? Who's made it? What's it made from? What am I going to do with it afterwards? Those are all questions that we can ask, and putting that little, I think the thing I found was that having that stopgap of, I need this, oh, where am I going to find it from, rather than dashing out to the supermarket or whatever, that was enough space for me to stop and think, okay, what might be a better choice? What might be a different choice? Rather than that knee-jerk reaction of just sort of rushing off and buying it. So yeah, it was hugely empowering, and just discovering that I can make a difference, that I can have an impact no matter how small, and all those little actions, all those, by individuals, they all add up, and there's all these organisations here who are amplifying that impact because they're doing it on a, you know, on a bigger scale. There's ethical businesses, there's social enterprises, there's you know, not-for-profit organisations that are all making good stuff happen, and they're amplifying all our individual actions as well, which is just phenomenal. So I think my last slide is this brilliant quote from Jane Goodall, which I'll have to read because I can never remember it. I think one of the most important things for people to understand is don't feel helpless when you look at all the problems of the world. Realise that if you think about the consequences of the small choices you make each day, what you buy, what you eat, where did it come from, how was it made, did it harm the environment, then you make more ethical decisions. And in the end, it's hundreds of millions of people making small choices that are the right choices that lead us to a new kind of world. And that feels like quite a good place to stop.